1 week before our third wedding anniversary, David asked me for a divorce. He said he had fallen in love with a woman at first sight. Marrying me had only been out of duty. I didn't cry or make a scene, I only asked him one question: why? He glanced up and, casually, explained, "I'm tired of it." He begged me to let him go. So I signed the divorce papers and agreed to return his freedom. But later, everyone in Jiangqing was saying that David got drunk late at night, his eyes red, pleading with me not to leave. When David proposed the divorce to me, I was booking a restaurant for our anniversary. I have always taken care of his matters personally. David is picky, he prefers Angus steak and only eats the freshest ones flown in. So the restaurant manager and I checked the menu item by item, afraid of making a mistake. When I heard what he said, I was momentarily stunned. What? Could I have heard wrong? I said, "I met a girl who makes my heart race. Let's divorce." David dropped the bomb calmly, as if saying what he had for lunch. His face was casual and composed. I turned, met his eyes for a long time. Instinctively glanced at the calendar. It wasn't April Fool's. There was no smell of alcohol on him, and his eyes were clear. So he wasn't joking. 1 week before our third wedding anniversary, my husband wanted a divorce. For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. David went on, telling me about how he had fallen for her. His tone was affectionate and lingering. He said that recently a partner had invited him to see a performance, and he fell in love at first sight with an actress in the dance drama. She stood on the stage, beautiful like a white swan, shining. When I saw her, I finally understood what it means to be moved, what love is. I know it's hard for you to accept, but love doesn't obey reason. His eyes glittered with excitement, exactly like a young man newly ensnared by love. Every sentence was like a knife, cutting me again and again. I stared at him numbly as he spoke with fervor, his mouth full of praise for another girl. I didn't know what to say. His sudden distraction, the unfamiliar scent of perfume on him, all glaringly obvious signs, he had fallen out of love. Then he tore open the perfunctory past with bloody honesty. "Emily, I married you because Grandma, on her deathbed, asked me to take care of you. You know, I don't actually like your type. I never understood love at first sight until I met Vivian." He mentioned the girl who made his heart beat, his tone even softer now. Looking back calmly, "What I feel for you is more gratitude." He said it with complete righteousness, without a trace of hesitation or guilt. Rather, there was a sense of relief at finally having said it. And a faint feeling of liberation. My brain froze for a few seconds, and I couldn't help but give a bitter laugh. So that's how it was. I had misunderstood. It turned out he married me for Grandma's dying wish. I had always thought he married me because he loved me. Otherwise he wouldn't have accompanied me over mountains and across valleys to visit my parents' graves when I was grieving. He wouldn't have stayed up 2 nights straight, frantic because of my appendicitis. He wouldn't have stood up for me in front of all our friends, announcing loudly that he was going to marry me. Now, he says with conviction that he doesn't love me. He married me out of duty. He suddenly met a girl who made his heart race. So what were all these years of ours worth? A dense, stinging pain spread through my chest. I took a deep breath and forced back my tears. I only asked him softly, "Why?" David explained nonchalantly, "I'm tired of it. My girl told me I should pursue freedom and love. Emily, for the sake of the times I helped you out, please let me go. I'll give you lots and lots of money." He pulled a divorce agreement out and laid it on the table, his whole demeanor anxious and exhilarated as he listed conditions. As if, the moment I nodded, he could give everything just to rush off toward that romantic love. David and I had been together for so many years that I knew he was stubborn by nature. Once he made up his mind, it was hard for him to turn back. Today what he said wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. I counted silently in my head. 10, 9, 8, 1. My heartbeat, from frantic, gradually slowed until it was steady. When it had completely calmed, I took the agreement and signed. "All right, you're free now." David's carefully prepared long speech got stuck in his throat. He looked somewhat surprised. To him, I should have acted incredulous. Then begged, cried, refused at all costs. After all, this marriage was something I bought with a favor. When I was 17, I found David on the mountain. He had been kidnapped, the kidnappers took the ransom and then abandoned him in the hills. When I discovered him, he was burning with fever, his body covered in wounds. His life hung by a thread. I gritted my teeth, shouldered him, and carried him over a dozen miles of mountain paths to the town to see a doctor. Later, his family came looking for us. David clung tightly to the hem of my clothes in his coma, refusing to let go. So I was taken back to the Song family with him. After he healed, he wouldn't speak, and he wouldn't let me leave. His parents were unhappy, but there was nothing they could do. In the end, it was his grandmother who made the decision and let me stay in the Song family. Years later, she arranged for David to marry me. Out in the world, people said that I had adored David all these years, so I had used gratitude to force him into marrying me. David might have thought so too. That's why, for the first few years, he always treated me with a kind of coolness. Until his mother forced him to get engaged to someone else, he drank himself senseless and suddenly came after me. Fireworks, candlelight, musical fountains. He took me through every kind of romance. In his eyes, a marriage born of careful calculation was something I wouldn't give up easily. That's why, on the divorce agreement, he promised to compensate me handsomely. The pain that cut to the bone grew sharper. It hurt so much I wanted to cry. Yet the corners of my eyes remained dry. He put the agreement away, but didn't leave right away. There was an unreadable emotion in his eyes. You can stay in this house for now. After the cooling-off period, once the divorce papers are finalized, we'll announce the divorce. I shook my head gently, no need. Since I had already agreed to him, I wouldn't clutch or beg. I didn't want to become like my mother for the sake of a marriage. She spent her whole life chasing love, died alone in the deep mountains. And the man she loved, when he found out, didn't shed a single tear for her. He opened his mouth as if to say something. But no sound came out for a long time, so he simply turned and pushed the door to leave. On my phone, the restaurant manager was still sending messages. Our Angus steaks aren't fresh enough lately, can we substitute with Kobe beef? The texture is far superior. What a coincidence. It seems even God knows our marriage needs a substitute. My chest swelled like a rising tide, sweeping over me in a wave of suffocation. I lowered my eyes and, after deleting and rewriting, replied to him, no need. Sorry, please cancel the reservation. I stayed in the marital home all afternoon. Sitting on the floor, I sorted things one by one. After 3 years of marriage, there wasn't much in this house that truly belonged to me. I picked and chose, and in the end barely managed to fill half a suitcase. I packed the wedding photos, the matching couple mugs, the pile of stuffed toys and all the messy odds and ends into a cardboard box and shoved it under the bed. Then I slipped the ring off my finger and set it on the table. The red mark on my skin seemed to remind me that not fitting just means not fitting. Forcing it wouldn't end well. As I was thinking that, my phone suddenly received a video call from David's mother. I tapped it open casually, the camera wavered a few times. Neon lights and flowing wine, the atmosphere lively and loud. It felt like a party. A few seconds later, someone asked with interest, David, are you really going to divorce Emily? The camera naturally shifted to David. His face flushed, drunk. But his answer was adamant, of course I'm getting a divorce. The other person pondered, you'd give up a beauty like Emily? He leaned back in his chair, lowered his eyes and smiled. Casual and offhand, he explained, you don't know her. She's like a glass of boiled water with food coloring. Looks nice, but in truth bland and tasteless, impossible to get excited about. He looked up, scanned the room and snorted, I'm bored. There was a few seconds of silence, then a burst of laughter. As expected of David. Such a pretty, considerate wife, he can just toss her aside like that. Amid the chorus of praise, David's voice grew more wistful. These years of marriage have been unbearably dull. Emily is beautiful, but her character is too boring. If it weren't for her holding that favor over me, if my mother hadn't forced me into blind dates, I would never have married her. When the words finished, the playback bar reached the end. My heart hadn't even had time to feel the pain. David's mother sent another cold message: go back to the old house and explain. Before the final divorce, there were still matters that couldn't be avoided. I sighed and forwarded the screenshot to David alone. 7th day of the divorce cooling-off period, news that David was spending lavishly to play at romance quickly dominated the entertainment headlines. The accompanying photo showed his handsome profile smiling as he held a bouquet. He booked a full-city fireworks display at Jiangqing's most romantic Starlight restaurant, and ostentatiously frequented auction houses to win a master-crafted necklace. Everyone envied his lover and kept praising how lucky I was. Only a fine, bitter ache rose at the very core of my heart. The person he now ardently wanted was not me. David had always been like this. When he liked someone, he wanted the whole world to know. Even if he couldn't make his relationship with Vivian public now, he still wanted the girl who stirred his heart to feel his passion. When he pursued me, he used to ask me every day what my wishes were. I said cautiously that I missed home. He bought a ticket without a word and rode with me for 2 bumpy days back to the mountains. He laid a bouquet on my mother's grave. No sooner had we returned than he fell ill. I crouched by his bedside, frantic with worry. The first thing he did when he opened his eyes was propose to me. "Emily, will you marry me? I'll always treat you well." The sweet talk of being in love is so moving. So when it's over, it hurts all the more. I inexplicably thought of the way he sheltered my arm in the rain. And his bright, sincere eyes. I nodded. I gave up the chance to pursue further studies. Later, we got married. On the night before the wedding I woke from a dream and said I missed that old-fashioned osmanthus cake shop in the south of the city. He didn't hesitate, he put on his clothes and drove across half the city just to satisfy my whim. Even now, that incident is brought up from time to time. They say I am simply the happiest woman. You see, he once treated me so well too. But he still fell in love at first sight with another girl. As I thought that, my phone calendar suddenly chimed. A reminder told me the day after tomorrow was my hospital follow-up. I've suffered from malnutrition since childhood, so my constitution is a bit weaker than most people's. I need to have regular hospital checkups. After a round of tests, the pain often leaves me trembling all over. I curl up into a ball. David would always hold me close with concern. "Emily, if it's too painful, we don't have to keep going." I forced myself through the discomfort. I wanted to have a child with him. That way, David's mother might not oppose us so much. She might stop periodically introducing girls she considered more suitable for him. After all, David and I were worlds apart in status. His family would never be fully satisfied. At the time I thought that for the sake of a happy marriage, all of this seemed worth it. The day after tomorrow happens to be the follow-up appointment. I go to the hospital at the agreed time, planning to finish this checkup. And to tell the doctor, from now on, there's no need. After the routine examination, the doctor suddenly set down his instruments and said, "Congratulations." Seeing my puzzled look, he smiled and explained, "Miss Emily, you are 5 weeks pregnant." I stood frozen where I was, my whole body plunging into an ice cellar. Counting the dates, it was my birthday that day. David was drunk, holding me and promising that if we ever had a child, he would make him the happiest baby in the world. My hand instinctively rested on my lower abdomen. If this child were born now, he wouldn't be happy. I took a deep breath and, with difficulty, asked the doctor, "Excuse me, can I give this up?" The doctor stared at me in astonishment, frowning. He told me to go home and think it over more carefully. He said my body is weak. If I were to deliberately terminate this pregnancy, it would do great harm to my health. Also, ending a pregnancy requires the father's signature. From every angle, he did not recommend I have an abortion. I held the report in a daze and stumbled out. I didn't expect David to be right outside. Leaning against him was a girl hooked up to Unfor. Her features were striking, lips a little upturned and red, vibrant and unabashed at a glance. The name Vivian suited her perfectly. Vivian coquettishly acted spoiled toward him, saying she was cold all over. Affectionately she made a request, "David, could you warm me up?" He cupped the girl's hands in his palms. "See, like this you won't be cold." The two of them were very sweet. I couldn't help but steal a few more glances. David happened to look up, and our eyes met. His gaze dropped to the report in my hand. He seemed about to say something, but the girl beside him suddenly cried out in pain. He immediately lowered his head and asked her, "Vivian, where do you hurt?" I smiled mockingly, decisively tore the report to shreds, and stuffed it into the trash can. The last shred of hope finally vanished. As if sensing my mood, a sharp, rhythmic pain pulsed through my abdomen. My knees went weak. I braced myself against a pillar to stay upright. By the time the dizziness passed, someone had grabbed my arm from behind. His voice sounded urgent. "Emily, what's wrong?" David frowned and steadied me, his face full of concern. Was there a problem with the test results? I really can't understand this man. He clearly said there were no feelings left and unhesitatingly asked me for a divorce. Now that he's gone after the person who makes his heart beat, he comes back to ask if I'm okay. What is he trying to do? I didn't want to look pathetic, so I shook my head. I pulled my hand away from his with effort and difficulty, and walked out slowly. I didn't want any more entanglement with him. But David stepped aside and reached out to stop me. "Emily, don't be mad at me. Even if we won't be together anymore, I still have responsibilities toward you." He spoke with righteous certainty, not seeing anything wrong with it at all. I don't know why, words that once moved me deeply now somehow sound a little laughable. There were many things I didn't say before, not because I didn't know, but because I didn't want to shatter the calm. Even now, he still paints his coldness as a pursuit of love. I couldn't help but speak up and puncture the lie. "David, your heart belongs only to Vivian, doesn't it?" A month ago, he rushed off on a business trip and accidentally left his phone at home. When the driver was taking me to the airport, the screen lit up several times. We hadn't been married long when David personally registered my fingerprint on his phone. He said a good husband isn't afraid of his wife checking his phone. I never suspected he had someone else in his heart, so naturally I never looked through his phone after we married. The moment my index finger pressed the screen, the phone unlocked smoothly. The contact saved as Vivian had sent a flurry of new messages. We met through a game. I scrolled through casually, everything from one-sided shares to growing intimacy. It had only been a little over half a month. "Will you be online tonight? I want that couple skin reward. Everyone in the guild says we're a match made in heaven, hee. Are you mad? Are you feeling unwell? I'm worried, remember to reply when you see this. It's my period today, my stomach hurts a bit. Thank you for the brown sugar water and the medicine. I really like them." David replied half-heartedly and infrequently. But he was only too happy to share his life with her. Finally, Vivian sent one line, "This year, my birthday wish is that we meet once." When I handed my phone to David, he wrapped me in a tender embrace. Sweet words soothed me. "Thanks, wife. Be good at home and wait for me to come back, your husband will bring you a gift." I leaned against him, feigning calm, but my heart was racing. My sixth sense told me there was something between David and Vivian. I was anxious for a long time. Every time I wanted to speak, I feared my suspicions would ruin the marriage. Until David asked for a divorce, a weight finally lifted from my chest. Looking back now, perhaps it was on that business trip that he first met Vivian. And for her, he fell in love at first sight. Hearing that name, David's expression kept shifting. Before he could even think of an excuse to fabricate a lie, Vivian suddenly ran over from the side and, hands winding around David's waist, clung to him coquettishly. "David, the injection hurt so much, look, my hand is all bruised." Her voice was sweet and petulant, her face still holding a touch of innocence. She was vividly alive. For a moment, I felt as if I was looking at the kind of girl I had once envied most, throwing herself into flirtation, boldly radiant, untouched by any storm. Because she knew someone would love her. David frowned and pulled her hand out of his coat. His voice was gentle, soothing her. "Vivian, be a good girl. Go rest over there for a bit. I still have some things to handle." Vivian glanced back at me, pouting displeased, swinging his arm in an attempt to bluff her way through. After fussing for a while and seeing David had no intention of relenting, she obediently sat down on a bench not far away. "Hurry up then, the movie starts in an hour." David touched her face, nodded absent-mindedly. He walked back, looked me in the eye, and suddenly hesitated. "You didn't come to the hospital today because you heard I was going to take Vivian to the doctor, did you?" "How funny." I couldn't help but laugh, but I couldn't. I pinched my arm hard. It hurt, so I wasn't dreaming. At that moment, numbness and fatigue enveloped me like a tide. A spasm rippled through my stomach. I turned away and gagged twice from the nausea. I had only just straightened up when I pulled out the calendar and shoved it at him. 18 days left. In 18 days we could finally part ways for good. It was the 15th day of the divorce cooling-off period. Word had spread like wildfire that David and Vivian had gone on a movie date. Some people said David had finally found true love. More sneers than anything else, David and his father were cut from the same cloth. I've long found that woman insufferable. Support David in pursuing true love. Like father, like son. I heard David's parents are a loveless couple too. David's mother couldn't bear the gossip and ordered David and me to go back immediately to explain. When I arrived by taxi, David's mother wore a look of frozen severity, scolding him. "You insisted you wouldn't marry anyone else, so how could you grow tired of her after only 3 years?" After being taken in by the Song family, I lived each day with extreme caution. In that vast house, the air was cold and oppressive. Only David's grandmother would ask how I was doing. After David was rescued, he became fiercely rebellious and stopped speaking to me at all. But whenever he had a nightmare, he had to hold something to fall asleep. He was too proud to admit it, so every time I would sneak in, slip my hand into his, and leave again in the morning. Once, David's grandmother saw us and asked if I liked David. I said I didn't know. I didn't want to see him forever living in shadow, never able to pull himself out, just like my own unhappy, dark childhood. Later, David had a fight with his father and went out racing. The moment he collided with the oncoming car, I lunged forward and used my body to shield him. They kept him in emergency care for 3 whole days before he finally came out of danger. Perhaps because of the life-saving debt, David's grandmother grasped his hand on her deathbed and insisted that he marry me. At first he was reluctant, and the way he looked at me was very cold. Later, one day, he suddenly came back covered in wounds, knelt on the floor, and told David's mother he would marry no one but me. 3 years later, he knelt before David's mother again. This time it was to ask for a divorce from me. Hearing his mother speak, David sneered, tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Got bored, want a divorce, isn't that normal? Who can guarantee they'll love only one person for their whole life? Must I be like you and my father, pretending to be a couple every day while being worlds apart behind closed doors?" Footsteps stopped outside the door. I heard David's stubborn voice. "I'm not like you all. Vivian is lively, adorable, when I see her I feel happy." David's mother was furious and slapped him across the face. She tossed a stack of photos onto the floor. "Bastard! Look at this yourself." Scattered on the floor were pictures of David carrying Vivian into a hotel. They held hands, clung to each other, embracing. Their smiles were sweet. From every angle, the candid shots would be more than enough to fill an entire front page. I used to think that loving someone at the very least meant learning to respect them. If he truly loved Vivian, he wouldn't bear to see her treated unfairly. Unfortunately, there were still more than 10 days before the divorce was final. He couldn't wait even a moment. I thought with a sneer, but my body reflexively pushed the door open. The divorce papers, I had already signed them. Wait another 12 days and David would be free and clear to marry someone else. I pushed the divorce papers across to David's mother. David's mother shot me a cold glance, her attitude remained icy. I'll make this clear now, even if you agree to the divorce, that woman will never set foot in my house. With that, she turned and went upstairs. Only David and I were left in the living room. Neither Vivian nor I were the daughter-in-law David's mother had envisioned. She agreed to let David marry me because it was his grandmother's dying wish. But Vivian, she probably still has a long way to go. Maybe he truly no longer had feelings. I looked at David kneeling on the floor and, to my surprise, found myself worrying about them both. This road would be a hard one. But I'm here today for another matter. I took the consent form for terminating the pregnancy out of my bag. I handed him the pen. While there's still time, sign this. Endure it a little longer, and you'll be free. After learning I was pregnant, I couldn't sleep for nights. I tossed and turned, unable to stop crying, feeling nauseous, vomiting. I kept finding my mind drifting back to my childhood. The story is cliched. A wealthy young gentleman goes to the countryside for a cultural visit and falls in love at first sight with a mountain girl. With sweet words and honeyed promises, he wins the girl's secret affections. Before long, the gentleman suddenly disappears without a trace. My mother returns to the mountains alone and is scolded by people. Determined, she moves us up to live halfway up the mountain. When I was 10, my mother died of illness. The people in the mountain all called me a wild child. This child came at the wrong time, he shouldn't have been born into a single-parent family. What is this? David frowned as he took the consent form, glancing at it carelessly. Then he froze in place. Like a silent statue. After a long moment, he looked up with a trembling voice, unbelieving. Emily, you're pregnant? I didn't understand why he was so agitated. Like a rookie father, there was even a hint of joy in his voice. He should have been begging me to give it up quickly. Otherwise, how would he explain it to Vivian? I nodded, then immediately shook my head. Yes, but it's not important. You just need to sign. Unexpectedly, he sprang to his feet and tore the consent form to shreds. Staring at me, he said, "No, I don't agree." David gripped my shoulder hard, his voice desperate. Can you carry the baby to term? We'll raise him together. I'll take responsibility for the child. He would take responsibility? I instinctively took 2 steps back. A chill washed over my heart. Are you crazy? You're the one who wanted the divorce. I don't need you to be responsible. David ignored me and kept insisting, I won't give up, Emily. We're not getting a divorce. I pushed him away with all my strength and turned to leave in a panic. I hadn't expected things to become so stuck. But I had to get the divorce, and I couldn't keep this child. Divorce cooling off period, day 20. David was blocking the entrance to my newly rented apartment, looking haggard. A blue stubble had grown on his chin. He followed me, jabbering, why won't you agree? We've been hoping for a child for so long, now that he's here it's fate. Fate? I turned to him coldly, David, you were the one who asked for a divorce. You told me you didn't love me. Do you suddenly love me again just because I have a child? He was at a loss for words. People need excitement. I've thought it through these past few days. My thing with Vivian was just a passing novelty. When I'm with her, I can't help but think of the days with you. Emily, could you give me one more chance? In the TV dramas I used to watch, scumbags always had all kinds of excuses when they fell out of love. They loved to explain, I only made a mistake any man could make. David held me then, tender and full of feeling. They're all such lousy people. If you love someone, how could you be attracted to someone else? Don't be angry, honey. Now he had become the lousy person he had spoken of. I couldn't help but laugh a little. Years of companionship and the misattributed thrills of the bridge effect had trapped me in an abyss. I thought that was love, and because of it I tossed and turned day and night. Looking back without the rose-colored filter, I felt nothing but relief. It was my poor judgment to have once loved such a rotten man. From now on, never again. I looked at David steadily, placed the consent form in his arms, and said softly, "Sign it, then. From now on we'll go our separate ways. And, wish you both happiness." Day 28 of the divorce cooling-off period. David didn't show up again. While sorting through old things, I found a photo I took as a child. My face was serious, yet somehow soft and tender. The corners looked as if they'd been rubbed over and over. On the back my mother had written, stroke by stroke, "My little treasure." For some reason, tears slipped out without my permission. I touched my lower belly. If David really refused to sign, once the divorce was final, I'll raise him myself. I was planning what to do next when someone suddenly started pounding the doorbell. I opened the door. Vivian looked pale, biting her lip as she asked to come in and sit down. I didn't agree. I put my hand across the doorway. "Say whatever you have to say out here." She lowered her eyes, then gave a small smile. "You must be feeling pretty pleased with yourself now, huh?" "What?" I couldn't help but look at her in confusion. Vivian looked up and spoke as if to herself, "David is going to break up with me these days. He says you're pregnant." Her gaze landed on my belly. "He has to be responsible for you and the baby. He doesn't want me anymore." So? I understood even less. If David was breaking up with her, what did that have to do with coming to me? Do you really expect me, his ex-wife, to come and solve their romantic problems? Sorry, I don't have the leisure for that. Seeing me silent for a long time, Vivian grew anxious. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing pale arms covered in scars. The rows of marks were shocking to behold. Her voice suddenly broke into a cry, "Emily, I'm sick. If I leave him, I'll die. Please, don't fight him with me, okay? Whatever you want, I can give you." I was dumbstruck. She cried with a heartbreaking tenderness. But to be honest, it was hard for me to feel any sympathy. Falling apart over a man wasn't worth it. Her illness, at root, was caused by David. It had nothing to do with me. I refused her coldly, "Sorry, none of what you're saying has anything to do with me. You should go find David." Vivian jerked her head up and glared at me with hatred. Suddenly she lunged forward and shoved me hard. My foot slipped, and by reflex I stumbled backward. I fell heavily to the ground. A violent blow hit my abdomen. Then came a wave of pain and my vision went dark. Before I passed out, I thought I heard David's panicked voice. Helpless, just like the time of the car accident when I had thrown myself in front of him. "Emily, what's wrong? Don't scare me. The baby couldn't be saved." My body was too weak and the impact too violent. Before we could reach the hospital, the child had already died inside me. When he heard the news, David's eyes reddened before mine did. He looked as if the sky had fallen. By the time I opened my eyes, he had rushed over and was holding me tight, his voice hoarse. "Emily, we'll have children again." It hurt. It hurt so much. I pushed him away indifferently, my chest hollow and empty. Maybe it was simply that this child and I were never meant to be. He arrived when I didn't want him. Just as I decided to keep him, he left. Some things can't be forced. Now, I no longer want to see David and Vivian at all. Exhausted, I told David, "Have the divorce paperwork done the day after tomorrow, on time. After that, let's never see each other again." The moment the words left my mouth, David stared at me as if he'd been struck by something devastating. He ground his teeth, each word measured as he accused, "Emily, is this how you want a divorce? Was all of our past a lie? You never loved me?" I looked at him as if he were a stranger. This man is so strange. He was the one who first had a change of heart and asked for a divorce. He was the one who said aloud that he was tired of it all. He was the one who, afraid I'd cling to him, produced the divorce papers. And now, how dare he come and blame me? My body and mind were flooded with deep exhaustion. I buried my head in the covers, too lazy to deal with him anymore. After a long while, I heard the door open. David left quietly. On the day the divorce cooling-off period ended, I checked out early. When I took a taxi to the Civil Affairs Bureau, I happened to run into David pulling up in a car. Vivian was getting out of the passenger seat. The night we lost the baby, I called David's mother to make clear I was determined to divorce. David's mother sneered with a pleased little laugh when she heard, "I told you back then you two wouldn't last." For the first time I rudely interrupted her and went straight to the point, "None of that matters. Please make sure David arrives at the Civil Affairs Bureau on time." My tone must have been off, because David's mother angrily hung up on me. But I wasn't worried that David wouldn't show up at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Given this former mother-in-law's need to control, she couldn't wait for me to hurry up and divorce her son. She always had ways to manage him. The wind was a little strong. Standing in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau, David reached out to try to smooth my hair. I instinctively stepped back. He awkwardly withdrew his hand and turned away, coldly ordering Vivian to apologize to me. The girl grudgingly shuffled over and muttered an sorry. Her eyes were rimmed red, as if I had bullied her. I turned my head, refusing to accept it. If apologies sufficed, the law would be meaningless. For intentionally hurting me, I had already pulled the surveillance footage and hired a good lawyer. After that, everything would be left to the process. For that reason, I specifically added a condition to David's mother that the Song family promise not to interfere in the matter. I believed that public opinion and the law would ensure Vivian received the punishment she deserved. Sitting by the window, ready to sign, David's lips trembled. Like a dying struggle, unwilling, he asked me, "Can we not divorce?" There was even a quaver of crying in his voice. I watched him abase himself. I thought to myself that he must truly be regretting it. At the time, a surge of hormones made him impulsively believe he'd found love. Once the novelty faded, he regretted it. Before we entered marriage, I had told him that marriage, at its core, is a contract, a responsibility. Since he chose to breach that contract, there was no turning back. I shook my head coldly. No. The light in David's eyes completely extinguished. When he left, David begged humbly, "Let me drive you one last time." I didn't agree. I put the divorce certificate and the university acceptance letter into a bag and let out a long, deep breath. Back then I gave up further studies to get married. It had always been a regret in my heart. Now, at last, I have plenty of time to return to my alma mater and finish the studies I left undone. There are many days ahead. Whatever entanglement David and Vivian have is no longer any concern of mine. Vivian stood beside them the whole time with her head bowed, saying nothing. As I walked past her, I noticed the corner of her mouth had crooked up a little. A sudden sense of foreboding rose in my chest. But respect other people's fates, and put aside the urge to play savior. That afternoon, I boarded the plane bound for abroad without incident. When the plane climbed to 4,000 meters, I looked out at the clear sky. I said goodbye to this place with a quiet heart. I only heard about what happened later after I returned to the country. On the way back from the Civil Affairs Bureau that day, David's car was in an accident. When he got onto the highway, a large oncoming vehicle suddenly changed lanes. David's brakes failed and he plowed through the guardrail. He was rushed to the hospital and fought for his life for 3 days and nights, but David remained unconscious and never woke. David's mother was furious and, after an investigation, discovered that Vivian had tampered with the car. Originally, Vivian had planned to take David with her in death. But the specially modified car was incredibly sturdy. In the end, David became a vegetable. No one knew when he might wake up. Or perhaps he never would. As for her, after being discharged with both legs amputated, David's mother mercilessly sent her to prison. Deliberately injuring someone causing serious harm, at least half of your life will be spent behind bars. 2 seconds before losing consciousness completely. David thought that there would never again be someone who would throw themselves in front of him without hesitation. In the end, he had personally lost the person who loved him most. Someone finished telling me this story and asked me what I thought. I lowered my head and looked at the thesis in my hands. All of these, good and bad alike, should be kept far away from my life. My bright future is still very, very long. So I looked up, smiled slightly, and said earnestly, look to the future.